All right, lesson number 2. Let's talk about choices. So it goes like this. Your child needs to do something and they don't want to do it. Or something is happening that they really don't like and they overreact. They start showing some really challenging behavior. In that moment, they need to know that there are some other choices. There are some other options to be able to navigate that situation. Think about yourself. From the point you were a child to maybe even recently, there were moments when you were completely overwhelmed by life. You could see no other option. You could see no other choices. And in that moment, you panicked, or you shut down, or you crossed the line of behavior that was not true to you. It was not good for you. It was not how you wanted to live your life. If only in those moments you could have seen that there were other choices, there were other options, you could have gotten through that situation much faster, much more easily. Same thing with your kids. They need you to show them, especially when they're overreacting, especially when they're being very difficult, they need you to show them that there are other choices. And then they need to learn how to use and to make those other choices. So that's what we're going to talk about here. We establish the line of acceptable behavior and we hold them to that line. And then we show them there's other options. You don't have to cross that line. There's other ways of handling this situation, and we show them the choices. And then we teach them how to make the right choice. In this lesson, we're going to talk about how you show your children what their choices are. And I have a chart that I want you to look at. And this is something I actually want you to fill out for yourself. And I've got some blank ones in the downloads, and you're welcome to use those, or you can use your own version of this. You can put it on paper. In fact, I've seen some really creative ways that parents have done this, and I'll share a couple of those examples for you at the end. All right, let's take a look at this. So the first part of this is expectations, right? We want the expectations to be very clear. Well, in this case, it's pretty simple. It's be respectful, or you could word it, don't cross the line, because you've already established what that is pretty clearly. And you'll see as you get into the choices, this is something you've already done. These are the 2 lines that you defined in that first chart I had you fill out. So you have the acceptable behavior line and then the unacceptable behaviors. And you list those. And they're in 2 different categories. So the green one is these acceptable behaviors. These are good choices that they can make, which is, and I didn't put them all, but here's some examples. Listen and respond the first time. Get ready for bed without being told. Say something nice. Tell the truth. Control your anger. Again, this is modified and specific to the behaviors that you're targeting with your child. And then in the bad choice, this is the red column. And it says screaming, name calling, talking back, cursing, slamming doors, arguing, whatever are those behaviors that you're targeting with your children. That's what goes in there. All right? And then let's follow the green path all the way through. The next line is results. So if they make the choice to choose the good path, then there's the result. And we want them to see that. We want them to see that here's what's expected of you, here's the choice. If you make this choice, here's what's going to happen. And when they make the good choice, life is good. The family is at peace. You are building trust. You get to keep all your privileges. Now let me make a really, really important point here. And I think I've made this several times already in this course. We don't want to reward our children for behavior. And again, what I mean by that is we're not paying them to make good choices. It's not, if you make good choices, I'm going to give you $5. Or if you make good choices, I'm going to give you a video game. If you make good choices, I'm going to go out of my way to give you something. That backfires because the reward becomes the motivation, and then it fades. And then you have to give more rewards, and then you set a precedent for giving rewards to make them do stuff. In this example, the reward is the result. It's that life goes on. This is what is expected of them, and life is better for them and for all the people around them when they make the good choice. And believe me, that is much more powerful and it's much more sustaining overall. Yes, it's easy to give them a reward, to get them to do what you want at first, but you're going to make it so much harder in the future. So this is the result. And then there's one more column. And this is, I just call it the future. Right? This is what life looks like in the future if they continue to make the good choice. So, and let me explain this a little bit here. Okay, so the first one says, get to choose homework time. Well, that would be an example where the child is always melting down when it's time to do homework. They're refusing to do homework, they're taking too long to do homework, they're really showing that challenging behavior around homework. That's where they cross the line. And so one of the things that the parents might have done is said, you have to do your homework as soon as you get home. Even though they really want to do it after dinner, they have to do it because that's the only time they can be monitored. It's the only way that they can keep with that expectation. And so right now, they don't have a choice around it. But if they stop arguing, if they stop fighting, if they stop resisting and crossing the line around their homework, in the future, well, we're going to let you choose to do your homework whenever you want as long as you're getting it done before bedtime. See how that works? The future is usually them getting more freedom and more trust because they're making a good choice. And so here's another one. You get to have sleepovers. Maybe they're making really bad choices when they're around their friends and they're not being responsible. So if they continue to not cross the line and make the good choices, they're going to have that freedom. That's not a reward. They have earned that. They have shown that they are responsible enough to be able to do that, so they get that chance. And that could be that they get to have a cell phone. You're showing maturity, you're making good choices, you're staying within the lines. There you go, there's the phone. Or extra time on your device, right? So that's what it looks like in the future, and that's the good choice path. Now, following the red line, the poor choices, in that case, if they chose to scream, if they chose to name call, there's going to be a result for all of those behaviors. And the most simple form of a natural consequence is to make it right. And what we mean by that is whatever they have done, whatever bad choice they've made, they have to turn that around. So for example, if they just called someone a name, right, then to make that right, they're going to have to apologize, say, I'm sorry I did that. That was wrong of me to call you that name. And then they're going to need to do something nice for that person, which could just be like a compliment, where they say, hey, I really like your shoes. And sometimes kids are going to say something silly like that, but it's more the effort, that they had to stop, they had to change their behavior, and then they had to make it right. If they break something, they have to fix something. If they disturb the peace in the home, then they're going to have to apologize to everybody. They got to make it right. And basically, the way that I explain this is their life stops until they make it right. So at that point, if they choose to they want to wait for 4 hours in their room doing absolutely nothing because they don't want to swallow their pride and apologize, that's their choice. They kind of grounded themselves for 4 hours. And in that case, you back off, you let them do that. Now, sometimes they do need to cool off, and you can just see that. So you might want to have a rule in your home where once they cross that line, they're going to have a minimum of 15 minutes in their room or sitting in a different place or something like that, and then they have to come back and make it right, whatever that thing is. Now, let me go ahead and tell you about this. There is another option besides having them basically do a timeout. And that's having them do something active, especially with younger children who are really hyperactive. I mean, we do this with our son, who's a very active 7-year-old boy right now. When he makes a bad choice, we have him run laps around the house or up and down the stairs. And it's not cruel and unusual. And in fact, he kind of appreciates it. Sometimes he asks to do it on his own just because he has energy he wants to get out. But it kind of goes like this, like, hey, you just crossed the line, that was a bad choice, that was a name, or whatever it is. You need to go run some laps around the house and come back and apologize. And what that does is it puts him in a whole different mindset. He goes from being frustrated to running and doing something physical. And when he comes back, I mean, literally, sometimes he's in just a good mood, and it is not a problem for him to apologize. So that is an option that you guys can use. You can actually have them do a task, and the idea is you're getting them to stop and think about what they did, like change situations, go run, go do something else, and then come back and let's make this right. Now, the other thing about making it right is sometimes they lose a privilege, and this makes sense if you think about it. If they have, for example, they're on their Xbox and they just won't get off their Xbox, and then they throw a meltdown and they cross the line many different ways, the natural consequence is because you didn't use the privilege correctly of being on the Xbox, you're going to lose that for a day. And so you can define those things, especially if it's around something predictable, such as being on a device or TV or bedtime, a certain point a day. You can already have that set up. One other thing about consequences, actually two other things. One is you want to define how long they're going to lose a privilege, and you want to define just the whole process. So if you're going to set it for a minimum of 15 minutes, you want that to be very clear. If they're going to lose something, you don't want to make that decision right then, unless it's something out of the blue you haven't dealt with before. So if they're going to lose their Xbox, is it going to be for a day? Is it going to be for 2 days? My rule is the younger they are, the shorter you want it to be. Usually a day is enough, because that's enough time for them to learn the lesson. But the older they get, you might want to extend that. And then you have factors too of, like safety. If they're being irresponsible with a car, that's a different story, because, that's could be life and death. So in that situation, you want a significant amount of time to go by for them to build up trust and really prove that they can be mature and make good choices. So that could be weeks, it could be months even. But you really want it to be the shortest possible time for them to learn and kind of get the idea that I can't do this anymore, or I'm going to have this negative result. And then we get into the future. Look at this. It's kind of the opposite of what it was in the green box, but here's one. You have to go to bed 30 minutes earlier. So that's for a child who they are just having a really hard time getting ready for bed. Maybe they're throwing meltdowns when it's time. They're consistently late. So you're basically saying, since you were having a hard time getting ready on time, now you're going to have to start the process 30 minutes earlier. And then maybe you're not able to take the driver's test because you haven't shown that you're mature enough and ready for that responsibility. Or you're not going to be able to choose your own homework time. We're going to keep it where it is until you can do that without meltdowns, and then you'll have the option of making that choice. All right? So that's how this thing flows. It's pretty simple, and don't get lost on the consequence. There's going to be a lot of opportunities to adjust that as we go through the course, and I'll also tell you about how to do it in the future. But right now, go ahead and download this and fill this part out. Take the line form that you did and put those choices in there, and then come up with the results. And like I said, they're pretty straightforward. Make it right, or if there's specific things, they're going to lose those privileges for a short period of time, and then what it looks like in the future. Now, a couple of those ideas I was telling you about, my form's just kind of straightforward and blank. I've had some really creative families that have brought it back in, and it's this artwork where it's this train on a train track, and the track's split, and there's a good choice and the bad choice, or a path going through the woods, and one of them is a peaceful, easy path, and the other one's full of thorns and mountains and challenges. And and if you have younger kids, get them involved in the process. They might want to help you decorate this thing, and you can make it even an art project or something like that. But this is something that you want to have written down so that you can talk this through with your kids, because the visualization really helps. But there's plenty of parents who have just taken my form and filled it in, and that's worked fine for them. All right, so I know you still have some questions about how all this fits together. Don't worry about that right now. That's lesson number 3 and lesson number 4 of this step. I promise you, I'm going to give you more details. Next lesson is about handling their resistance, how you bring this all together. I'm going to give you some great examples. Right now, I just want you to take some time and fill out this form and get that ready. And when it's done, I'll see you in lesson 3.